Vladimir, it's allowed to you now to share your screen if you have such wish. And just in 1 second, we'll be live on Facebook and the recording is on. So Vlad, the Zoom is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here. I must admit, I was originally going to talk about the emotional side of being a founder or a lone CEO or even a co-CEO in a smaller company. And I think it's an important subject, which is often overlooked because so many decisions we make are driven by emotions or at least influenced by emotions, even though we try to rationalize, but some of the crucial steps we make, like hiring key people, fundraising, there's a huge element of sympathy, fear, and other feelings involved. However, yesterday I did another session where I was going through my most expensive mistakes as a founder and as a CEO. And it was a short one. And that went well, I think, really personal, kind of digging into my own failures in the 10 years I've been in this position. So I thought maybe we should start with this today instead, because it's founder centric. It kind of segues into emotions as well. And I think it's genuinely practical. So if you guys don't mind, we're going to steer this into that direction, talking about some of the cases where I was too late to realize something and then ultimately cost us millions, maybe tens of millions in the long run. And then we'll just have a discussion based on that, because I really don't want this to be like a lecture. I'm not a lecturer. I don't have the talent for that, but having a conversation with other founders would be much nicer. So if that's okay with everyone, we can start with like a 15-minute talk from me, and then just see where it takes us. Yana, do I have your approval?
Yes.
Awesome.
It seems that the guys are also happy. Yes? No? But they're Estonians, you know.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I was looking like for a small movement of an eyebrow somewhere, and I got that. So I'm the same. I'm the same. So I'm gonna share my screen now. I have some really, really lazy basic slides, but that's better than just staring at me. I'm not that pretty. Okay, let me try this. You should be seeing my screen now. My most expensive mistakes. Are you guys seeing anything like that?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. So just some background so that you know where I'm coming from, what even gives me the street cred to talk about this. About 11 years ago, I co-founded a company which didn't position itself as a startup as such. We just built stuff for Android phones. Eventually decided that we are going to focus on games. Eventually realized that they should be free to play. So we're one of the early adopters of the whole smartphone gaming / free to play game as a service model, which gave us a huge competitive advantage in the beginning, while all the other game publishers were kind of on the beginning to realize that smartphones are a big game platform, that Android is a thing. And as a result, we managed to monetize our early products really well, eventually giving us fuel to grow from being 5 guys during the early days to about 140 right now, bootstrapping most of the way. We did a Series A couple of years ago, but for the first 8 years, were bootstrapping, nicely profitable. I think we had like a 5-digit net profit in our second full year, which was really nice for everyone involved. But we also made lots of mistakes on the way, and most of those I own entirely because I was put into this position of the chief guy, the CEO, so to say, even though, in the company of 5 people, it's kind of funny when people call themselves CEOs and CTOs. But I was chosen or nominated as the guy to wield this executive power. So I can say with confidence that the millions tens of millions we've gone through pointlessly are mostly my responsibility. And I decided to name some of the most expensive mistakes, most disastrous shortcomings in my career. And when I was thinking about that, I also realized that even though I have some regrets, and I definitely made, those bad calls with, bad hires, greenlighting the wrong kind of project at the wrong time. The most damage was done not by those isolated one-off events, but by systematic things, like systematically overlooking something, systematically not paying attention to something I was supposed to be paying attention to. So all the mistakes I'll be talking about are basically those systematic failures of myself in a founder/CEO position. And the number one is not defining my role clearly enough, early enough. Which is weird because, in a small team, everyone kind of does everything. But I learned that it's really important to draw the line at any scale, because as we grew, it just, happened so rapidly. Soon I was doing a little bit of everything. I kind of had an idea of what falls into my area of responsibility, like corporate development, biz dev was always my thing. Looking after the products, kind of steering the product strategy was my thing, but it was completely unknown to anyone else in the company. What happened in practice, people would come to me with all sorts of questions, would distract me all the time. They get confused. They go to other founders, other managers. If they don't get the right or the desired answer, response from me, they would turn to someone else. It was complete chaos. And for years, we never had a clear definition of what I'm actually doing in the company. Like, what's my contribution? What kind of problems I'm seeking solutions for? And one of the reasons is that we all call ourselves CEOs, but if you go to, Wikipedia and look up the definition, it kind of implies that you're like the big boss looking after the mini bosses, because the C in the CEO means chief. So there's got to be other executive people you're kind of managing. But in a smaller company, this is not the case. You're just one guy looking after some areas of the business. So the set of problems you're dealing with, they're completely unique and completely custom. And ultimately, I arrived at a set of criteria for choosing what I'm supposed to be working on, because it's been really confusing. And there's always, especially in the bigger organization, there's so much going on. There's so many things to take care of, and everybody's kind of looking up to you like, hey, Vlad, can you sort this out? Can you help us here? So my criteria are, it's got to be super high priority, very impactful, something that's potentially taking the business forward or eliminating some major life-threatening risk. I have to be the best guy for the job in the company, not necessarily the most senior, not the most experienced, but in this exact moment, I'm the best guy to do this. And I cannot hire anyone for this job, either because they are too expensive, or there isn't anyone on the market, or there is too much risk associated with bringing an outsider to do this. So currently, if you're interested, this mostly revolves around funding, exit strategy, as a whole, because funding and exit go kind of hand in hand, taking care of my shareholders, steering the product strategy to make sure it makes sense within the overall direction of the company, the overall pitch of the business, the value proposition we're trying to maintain and deliver both to the players and the shareholders and the investors, present and potential future, and the culture. This is where I place a lot of emphasis, especially in the last 3 years, because it's really difficult to have a company with a very strong set of values, very well-defined DNA, where the CEO is not involved in formulating this identity, because people look up to me anyway, and I cannot just delegate it to the HR guys. Another thing which I found very useful, and at the same time, something that damaged me badly during the first 5-6 years, was not realizing that founder, CEO, and shareholder are all different people, because we kind of grew into the role. We all started the company together. We all became C-level guys. We all held shares. And for years, I didn't realize that sometimes I'm making bad calls because I'm acting as a founder in the CEO seat, because I have this financial pressure, I have this expectations of people around me, kind of looking up to me to do the right thing. But in practice, a founder is just an icon. It's a guy who planted the seed, did something right, made the right call, placed the right bets. Once the company is more or less mature or independent or outgrows the initial tiny micro startup size, you're basically done. You just a picture on the wall, a shining light at the end of the tunnel, if you wish. But a founder doesn't wield any executive power. It's just an image, and that is it. Then a shareholder is basically a capitalist. As a shareholder, your motivation is to maximize your wealth. You want your shares to be worth more than they are currently. You want to control your risk. So this has nothing to do with the founder's motivation or the CEO protocol for making decisions. And then finally, the CEO guy is the guy who gets things done. So the practical benefit of slicing these roles into different pieces of the pie was that I realized that once I detach my ego as a founder or detach my financial interest as a shareholder from my CEO role, it becomes so simple, because CEOs, like any executives, operate by rather simple rules. The decisions we have to make can be difficult sometimes, but the protocol is quite simple. You have certain expectations set by the shareholders, defined by the strategy of the company. You have a certain set of values that you need to act within, and then you basically act based on that. So it's really simple. And if you remove the ego and you remove the distractions of being two other things at the same time. So sorting this out and understanding what I am, what exactly do I do, what chair do I really occupy, helped me tremendously become sharper, less stressed, more efficient, and delivering the message to the rest of the organization helped them as well, because at some point they finally realized, okay, this guy actually does something and he does this and that. So this is where we should turn if we have some problems. Next one, not seeking mentorship. I assume since you guys are here, you understand the value of at least listening to other people, but that wasn't the case for me, because I didn't graduate through any incubators, accelerators, mentorship programs. I just wrote some code in my apartment, and then we started the company based on that. And it took me 2 years to actually go to a trade show or speak with someone else from our industry, because we're so isolated. There wasn't much going on in Estonia either, so we could just go, to the existing big gaming company in Tallinn or Tartu and talk to them and seek some advice. We would like building something in complete isolation. And I didn't even realize that we could seek wisdom and guidance for free or very cheaply elsewhere. And the most mind-boggling example of me not leveraging the opportunities that existed was actually my first or second conference, where I had a meeting with a guy whose name was Ilkka Paananen. He ran another gaming studio in Helsinki. They were founded, I think, the same year as us. We were a bit further along. We were making more money. We're getting more downloads. We just chatted for half an hour. He showed their games. And then I started seeing the name of the studio in the news every other week, basically. And the name of the studio is Supercell. And they are one of the 2-3 best known names in the world of mobile gaming, at some point valued at 10 billion. So they got a lot of things right, even though they started at about the same time as us, but clearly they had way more insight, way more wisdom in the leadership team. And they were like light years ahead of us in terms of how to build a studio, how to nail the culture, how to have this cohesive unit, really compact, building awesome games super efficiently. And they've basically become a household name in our industry and one of the most attractive employers within a couple of years from their inception. So it's hard not to think about, the scenario where I sent them an email a couple of weeks later, maybe a couple of months later, and said, hey, we met this conference, we really liked each other, we clicked. do you mind if I ask a couple questions every now and then, or if we get on a call every quarter? I didn't think or didn't realize that anyone would be interested in that. And then again, it took me years to understand that mentors actually enjoy mentorship, and there are practical benefits in that, and seeking critique, kind of validating your ideas by throwing them at other minds, at younger minds, more aggressive people coming from different backgrounds. Building your network this way, maintain your personal brand. There's plenty of benefits in being a mentor to people. So it's basically a free service that was available since day one, and I just didn't use it. So as a result, we made lots and lots of mistakes on our own, and basically learned so many things the hard way and the expensive way. Next one, again, something that took me like 7 years to understand and kind of fully reflect on this, is working in two modes, reactive and proactive. And I must admit, most of the time, I'm in a reactive mode because I have so much incoming information. I have emails, I have chat messages, I have WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook messages all the time. Thankfully, no calls anymore for reasons I'll explain later. This kind of naturally puts you in this feedback loop where you're always expecting someone to bother you, and you become this machine for answering incoming requests. And it's really hard to get out, because when you get used to it, if miraculously at some point there is no incoming information, you're just idling there, kind of checking the chats, checking the statistics pages in my case. And at the end of the day, I would just sit there and think, hell, I don't even know what I did today. Like, I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted from the constant multitasking, like talking to 25 people at the same time. I have no idea if I actually accomplished anything. So I learned to kind of isolate myself, cut off all the communication that is not urgent, not interesting, not exciting, and forcing myself into a proactive mode where I'm doing research, where I'm thinking about my team, who needs help, not the guys who shout the loudest or consistently meet me through some kind of routine protocol, but the guys who are actually struggling or working on some exciting stuff now that's maybe being overlooked by me or other people in the company right now. So I kind of forcing myself into this mode where I declutter everything. I block time on my calendar and I just read the analytics. I play the games. I study the competition. I read books. I have deep conversations with people working on some interesting stuff. And then this basically unlocks new ideas and allows me to at least start trying to look beyond the horizon, or maybe at least a couple meters in front of me. Because when I'm stuck in this reactive mode with just people, throwing messages at me, I'm not looking anywhere. I'm just automatically responding. And this requires some discipline and lots of cynicism, I guess, because I used to respond to every email that I get because I thought this is ethical. Like, people are writing something, they are putting the effort in. I must at least say, hey, yes, or hell no. Stop doing that. I realized that this is just not feasible. This is damaging the organization. I have no obligation to respond to 20 emails I get daily from people trying to sell me something. I stopped picking up phone calls from people I do not know, or when I'm not expecting a phone call, like if there's a food delivery, then obviously I'm going to pick it up because I know the courier is here. All other cases, whether it's foreign or Estonian, I haven't done this in 3 or 4 years. And every time I talk about it, people ask me, aren't you afraid of missing like an important opportunity from like a big old school organization, like a massive investment bank who don't do emails for some reason, and they just call you and they offer you billions of dollars. But somehow in the previous 6 or 7 years, that never happened to me. And I never had anyone call me and offer something useful, something we could do real business based on. And yes, there is a slim chance that something like that is going to happen eventually, and there'll be someone with an amazing proposal who cannot use email and doesn't use social media and doesn't use messengers and has no one else to call in my organization. But the probability is so slim, it's not worth responding to all the other people daily and wasting so much energy and focus on it. And I do realize that in some businesses, in some areas, in some industries, you have to get on the phone, you have to respond to phone calls, just not in my case. And what about the police? The police can always find me, so I'm not concerned about that either. If I miss a call from the cops, I can be sure that eventually they're going to get to me. So nothing to worry about either. Next one, corporate finance. Sounds boring as hell. And basically, I work in gaming, and people get into gaming to not do stuff like finance, because gaming is perceived as this fun industry where we play video games and we design creative products for people of all shapes and sizes to enjoy. So this isn't something a game developer would naturally lean towards, but that's become so expensive so quickly. I really should have educated myself on how this works. And in the early days, when we were just a tiny company leaking cash or barely breaking even, it was much easier to keep track of all the expenses because we knew the clock was ticking. We were always struggling to survive for another day. We had virtually no revenue for the first 1.5 years, basically burning through our savings. And when you are in this position, you can feel the pain, you can smell the smoke from your own money being burned. So it's really easy to be cost conscious. But when you are profitable or you just get funded, you are flush with cash, it's so easy to become complacent. Yes, sometimes you need to splash the cash. Sometimes you need to overspend on some things, but you should always, in no circumstances, have enough transparency about the spending of the organization and always weigh everything against the alternatives. Like if we're throwing this awesome party that's going to cost us 35,000 euro, this is the money we are not spending on marketing. This is the money we're not spending on hiring an amazing person for 6 months. And should we do that? Maybe we should do that right now. Maybe we don't have, any marketing channel we could invest money into right now, and we are all set in terms of personnel, but the consideration should be always there. And something else that I only came to realize recently is the cost of hires from the enterprise value perspective. And this, again, is kind of cynical, but we've been in those situations where there's this guy and he's competent and his salary is like, let's say 3,000 euro, right? He's not very impactful right now, but he's good. We'd rather keep him around. Maybe next year there's a better project for him. We don't want to let go of a competent employee because the market is so difficult. But at the end of the day, 3K per month with taxes, with all the other expenses, probably comes down to 5,000-6,000, probably more. Let's say 6,000 euro in gross employment cost. So that's 70,000 in a year, which is maybe not a lot of money for a medium-sized company, or probably negligible for a bigger company. But let's say you are exiting and you are able to secure a very nice valuation multiple of let's say 15 times profit, which is kind of on the higher end of the scale, but not uncommon in gaming. For example, we've seen 30x multiples, 20x multiples. So basically, in that case, because you burn through those 70K over the course of the year, it's not going towards your EBIT or profit. And ultimately, you're missing out on 70 multiplied by 15, about 1 million euro in this case, in either shareholder payouts or investment that goes inside the company. So this is something to consider. And I've only learned recently to look at the employment cost and the size of the team and the fixed costs this way from the potential investment or exit value standpoint. Next one, really basic stuff. I'm kind of embarrassed. I'm talking about this, but there was a period of time where I wasn't interviewing every candidate because we grew beyond 80 or 100 people. And I was like, this guy is never going to report directly to me. He's reporting to his team lead, and the team is reporting to the producer, and then the producer is reporting to me. So why should I bother them with another hurdle to jump, another interview? I should just let them, exist with the team they are going to work with. Wrong, like so wrong. At 140 people and growing now, this takes only 30 minutes of my time a week on average. And this is super useful. I love those conversations. I get feedback from outsiders. I always ask people, how do you look from the outside? How do you perceive the company? What's the reputation? What do you think about the people you've spoken with so far? Your the HR guys, the team lead, or the producer, or someone else who interviewed you so far. Have you managed to take a look at the products? What do you think about the products? So I get all those interesting inputs from people who are just approaching us from the outside, analyzing us, coming from a different background, from a different company. That's super useful. At the same time, as we do that, we build trust. We sometimes have really deep conversations from the get-go with those people. I've been asked about my personal motivation. I've been asked about the overarching mission of the company. I've been asked about what car do I drive by a girl who is really into BMWs for some reason. And we had a conversation about that. This creates this interesting personal connection, which is really useful, especially in a larger company, because we have this direct line of communication right away. They know they won't be reporting to me, but they know that I am there. I'm this guy. I have this set of values. I'm super approachable. So they know that if something happens, if nothing else works, they can go directly to me because we already know each other. And if it sounds like 30 minutes or 40 minutes is not enough to make this kind of deep connection, I always say it's kind of like dating. If you're dating someone for the first time, 30 minutes is more than enough. 30 minutes is plenty of time. If you manage to have a good conversation, 30 minutes, you're doing okay. That's a very generous time allotment. So in our case, when we are talking about professional subjects, 30 minutes is plenty of time to cover so much ground. And then finally, in addition to kind of getting to know each other, me being able to reiterate or project our philosophy, our values, the DNA of the organization, make sure they understand it. It also gives me this kind of feedback loop and the ability to double check how well the HR team is working. If the candidates coming in are actually within the parameters we set, if they're well informed, if the onboarding process has already started to some extent, is going well. So I'm kind of looking after, kind of double checking if my recruiters and HR guys are doing a good job, because that's ultimately the most important thing in the company. And I'd rather have some kind of window into that. Next one, and there isn't much else left. We're getting close to the end, but this is a bit of a controversial one. I'm not taking enough care of myself. And it's controversial because we typically think in terms of extremes, like founders and CEOs throwing lavish parties, driving out in Lamborghinis and Porsches, a common sight in Tallinn. And on the other end of the spectrum, the extreme asceticism, like the hardcore nerds working out their basement for decades, not getting paid for decades. And it seems like, there is no in between, but there is. I think for most entrepreneurs, most managers, most founders, their peak efficiency is somewhere in the middle. We all admire, Elon Musk sleeping under desks, but just by sleeping under a desk, we do not become a genius billionaire. There are plenty of people who sleep at work routinely for other reasons. Not all of them are entrepreneurs or inventors. It's just that sometimes stuff gets exciting. Sometimes it's poor planning. Sometimes you just have to do this. This is not the goal. This is a hack. This is a solution to a problem. And at some point, I realized that I don't want my managers to be completely burnt out all the time. I don't want them to have health problems. I don't want them to have family problems. I don't want them to have miserable sex life. I don't want them to have financial pressure. I want my managers to feel good about themselves so that they know everything in their life is set properly. They are comfortable, and then they can focus on their work undistracted. And then I basically ask myself, if I want my managers to be in this position, why am I always putting myself in different circumstances? Why am I not paying myself anything? Why am I living in this tiny apartment where I get robbed every once in a while, where my neighbors forget to turn off the water every once in a while, and I'm always struggling, with the very basic domestic issues when I am tasked with running a multinational company, which is doing 10 million a year, hiring people left and right. And there's so much I should be really focused on right now. And eventually, I learned to kind of force myself to take breaks, to disconnect, to make sure my life is comfortable. I remember vividly, there was a year where we made around 5 million euro in net profit. And we were still a private company, so there were no investors on board. I was the largest shareholder. And in that year, I rewarded myself by buying a TV for 400 euro. So that was what I allowed myself to enjoy at that stage. And this is not healthy. This is just, it's good for a newspaper interview. You look good when you live in this kind of lifestyle. But if the personal cost is too great, you just end up making bad calls. And as a manager or a CEO for that matter, my job is ultimately to make good decisions. And to make good decisions, I should be in good shape. I should be treating myself as a professional athlete, taking breaks when needed, celebrating a lot. I train myself to celebrate everything because, again, if you only celebrate objective success, then you never open the bottle because it never happens, because all the projects are multi-year. By the time something has come to fruition, you already have new goals, you have new set of objectives, new investments. So you never get a chance to really give yourself a pat on the back. So I had to learn to do this. And also learn to understand that I'm a role model for my team and they imitate me to some extent, at least. If I'm always, struggling to get decent sleep, look like crap, not stable psychologically, I cannot expect my team to be efficient, sane people, which I really want them to be. And the last one, again, kind of obvious stuff, but there is exciting stuff and there is super exciting stuff. Everything we've done at CM has been exciting. We never made a game that was like, man, we shouldn't be doing this, but we're going to do this anyway. Of course, every new project was ambitious. We always went into new territory, but some of them were more so than the others. And over time, I kind of learned to distinguish the projects where I'm like, okay, this makes sense commercially, we should be doing this. And projects that really ignite me, where I'm like, oh, holy shit, this is the real deal. This is the secret that we know that nobody else really understands. So if we go there in that direction, we might be onto something really, really cool there. And I realized that even though I kind of tell myself I can be functional and efficient in both settings because I have my experience and my set of rules and protocols, I realized that when I'm really ignited about something, I'm like 10 times more efficient because my enthusiasm just spills over. I get so much done. It's so much easier for me to find funding, to find the right people, to, just stay engaged all the time. And it's really like a very basic example is how often I download the product builds, whether I do this when there's a new major update and somebody tells me, hey, you should check it out, or if I'm obsessively like checking out the project because I have it in my work environment already as not as a build, but as a Unity project or Unreal Engine project. I'm like obsessively checking out daily to see what's the new version looking like before it even gets built into a deliverable. So learning to distinguish that and kind of shamelessly distancing myself from the boring stuff and focusing on the really exciting stuff has really, really helped to ultimately do a better job. And thankfully, this is it. I think I've been speaking for like 30 minutes by now. I hope it wasn't too pretentious at some points, because I'm basically kind of giving you the ideal version of what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not doing this to the letter. I make mistakes left and right, and I break all these rules, which I just mentioned routinely, because I'm human like anyone else. But this is my personal reflection on the very expensive mistakes of the last 10 years. And I tried to put a number to each one of them. I realized it's impossible because they all like combined with each other, and there's like cumulative numbers that are really difficult to measure, but I estimate that we probably missed out on more revenue and profit than we have made, because I was not completely honest with myself, not completely up to the task, and not just, not capable enough. But it is what it is. We work with what we got. Questions, comments, critique? Jana, what should we do now? There's something in the chat.
Yes, and you just check. I mean, our guys are super awesome. They are very active in questioning. So, and I see that Anzori has already raised his hand. So you just like a little bit like look at the screen, and the guys will ask you. So Anzori, please.
Thank you. It was really suggestive and inspirational self-analyze. But I recognize that you started with the team of founders and kind of the roundtable like structure. But later you focused only yourself. What you can talk about these other 4 guys in this core?
2 guys were founders, 2 were early employees. So in that team, we had 5 people, but only 3 held shares and carried the financial risk, which is obviously related. I was always the most active guy. I had the most drive to start a company than the other 2. I'm not downplaying their contribution by no means, but I've always carried the burden of being like the face of the company, both internally and externally, formulating the strategy. Of course, we've consulted each other, and we have this routine of doing check-ins where we sit together for like 8 hours and just talk through stuff. And before the pandemic, we were always showing up for work and we were sitting in the same room. So we had this clear communication going on all the time. But we never had like real co-CEOs. So I was always the final authority, for better or worse.
But can you shortly analyze in similar way what you saw very close around you, this team? Have they similar struggles or
Oh yes,
in terms of the team dynamic?
Yeah, we've all changed over the course of 10 years. We've become vastly different. Even the older guys. One of my co-founders, when we started this whole thing, he was really reluctant to talk to people. He was formerly the CTO, and he was the stereotypical CTO with math background. He's a super smart guy, but he wasn't the people's person by any stretch of the imagination. He would never talk to anyone. And we actually used to work together in the previous company, and he was my boss. And whenever I approached him to ask something, he was like, he didn't look my way. He was playing 16 poker tables at the same time. And that's how approachable and social he used to be. Over the years, he changed completely. At some point, he became really excited about culture and building the DNA of the organization and this team spirit and the values that unite people. And he basically, with his typical methodical approach, he read like 20 best books on the subject, took the best courses, found the best mentors, took public speaking classes to improve his presentation, and ultimately became a completely different person, like giving lots of feedback to all the people around him, like completely transformed from being this really like isolated, super smart, nerdy guy to being someone who is much nicer than myself, even though I was like naturally more like people oriented. But he became the guy who is everybody loves in the company, like this, I'm the most stereotypical boss type in the people's mind, I think, by now. So his personal journey has been amazing.
Thank you.
And I think in case of all of us, it's we've all been through hardship. We've achieved amazing success really early on, but we've been through deep crisis. We nearly went out of business at least 2 times. We've faced almost bankruptcy. At some point, we had like 6 or 8 months of runway as a company with more than 80 employees. So we've been through some very difficult moments, like really dark moments. So because of that pressure, we all had to change our ways and develop as individuals in different ways.
I have a question about the last part you were talking about, the dark places and the dark moments. What is your hacks or tips how to bounce back from those dark moments?
I have a tip for not getting there in the first place, or minimizing the risk of getting there, again, based on my personal experience. I used to associate myself with my business way too much because, again, I grew up reading stories of great entrepreneurs who went all in, put it all on the table in pursuit of their dreams. There's plenty of these role models, right? Guys who basically went after crazy ideas, mortgaged their houses, bore incredible personal cost, and then ultimately became billionaires. But then at some point, I began to realize that there's a clear selection bias here. We are reading stories of billionaires, right? And I am not a billionaire. I'm not aspiring to be a billionaire. I'll probably never be a billionaire. So that doesn't necessarily apply to me. So I should not be adopting this super high risk, sacrifice it all for the dream of becoming a unicorn founder kind of approach. And instead, I should be optimizing for the realistic scenarios, because growing my company 5 times, 10 times, it doesn't, transform it into a unicorn, but it's still a pretty damn good job for someone in my position. And I eventually realized that to stay sane and minimize my stress, I should detach myself from my business as much as possible, detach my ego from it, and find something else in my life that I can lean on: my relationships, my family, my fitness routine and my fitness achievements, my art, whatever else, any passion. I used to think about it with sort of shame, like growing up, indoctrinated that a founder should be 100% focused on the business and on his business. I was ashamed of having something else around me. But then I learned that by diversifying my identity, I have some other important elements of my life that I can kind of lean on when things are not looking great at the company. So whenever something happens, I'm not spiraling down into this depressive, like self-sustaining and self-accelerating loop, because I can always step back and say, okay, this is shitty. This is a shitty situation, but we're going to sort it out. We've been there before. I have other things in my life. Even if, in the worst case scenario, this all, crashes and burns, there's more to my identity. There's more that makes me human. This is not the end of the world. And this just clears my head so well. And again, ultimately better decisions, even though it sounds like, a weird way to position yourself as a leader, but it really works incredibly well in practice.
I really love this talk. I feel much better about my work going forward. It doesn't feel like I'm going to be suffering as much, because it's like you're giving us permission to feel good and not kill ourselves for the job. But I'm also wondering, like, you have investment, right? Your investors, you're working for your investors essentially. So I agree that it makes sense to have a healthy CEO. Like, I know a lot of CEOs that just gain like tons of weight and they just look like they're going to drop dead, right? But what did the investors say when you tell them all this stuff? Like, I know they want to see happy, healthy, productive, but do you feel like they're happy to see this as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, good. So
it might be
like,
unfortunate, but the guy we have on board, he's a bit older than me, maybe 4 or 5 years senior. And he will be the first one to say, you guys shouldn't die while doing this, because ultimately fatigue means mistakes in any line of work. You get too stressed, you get too fatigued, you commit mistakes. And he doesn't care how many hours I work. If the results are there, then he's happy. And I know not everyone is this way, and I can totally imagine, completely different people. But then it's up to me to choose, who I take the money from. Yes, when we did the round, we actually had organizations with a different culture where it's very aggressive. It's very, kind of like commission-driven environment, kind of a boiler room environment almost. But there has to be cultural alignment between the people coming on board and people already on board. And if in my company, I want my managers to be happy, I want them healthy, I think this is the best way for us to thrive, then I probably shouldn't be taking money from people who expect us to, keep track of how many hours we work or some other bullshit, which is not useful at all in our industry. So I can totally see where you're coming from. And just to be clear, I still work a lot. It's not like I'm doing
I'm like sure you do
3-hour work days. Like my calendar is packed. Yeah. It's just that I'm not like idolizing this, and I'm not, suggesting that anyone in our management team kind of idolize their effort. Like, hey, I'm so tired right now. I have like 25 meetings today. In this case, like, so what? You idiot, you should have delegated this. You should have canceled half of them. You shouldn't be taking all these calls from service providers trying to sell you localization services because we already have this on board. It's kind of like going to a conference back in the day where I would just accept meetings from everyone. I would have like 15, 16 meetings for 7 days. I'd feel like I'm completely burnt out, achieved nothing because none of them were really like super high impact, super valuable. So there's a fine line, definitely. And the same can be said about personal life. I think I should be driving a car that's functional, that doesn't break down. I still drove a car which is like worth 3,000 euros until November, I think, because I kind of kept postponing this. But in the ideal world, I think, I shouldn't be always concerned about if I'm going to survive the next trip to the office, or if I'm going to get another fine for not having this inspection done, right? I should be thinking about something else. But then people take it to the extreme and buy themselves Lamborghinis because they can, and then they obsess over, if someone can scratch them or where do they park them. So, common sense rules in like always.
So hey, do you listen? Hear me?
Yes.
So my question is, when on the early years when you started building the team, the founding team, and the early employees, did you feel that some people did not put in so much effort? You needed to change the team, or you maybe the company went in a different direction because you, for example, had those founders, you had this kind of knowledge and know-how, so you went in that direction, or you saw that maybe you need to make little changes, and how hard is it to make the changes?
To the founding team specifically. Frankly, never considered that. We had some disagreements in the early years, and I can admit there were instances where I thought I was putting more effort than the others, sometimes because I was clocking like 16-hour shifts day in, day out, sleeping like 4 hours for days and weeks on end. And I had this perception that, I'm working so hard, the other guys are not. But in the end, A, it wasn't really true. B, it wasn't really the point. I was fortunate to not have any major like strategic disagreements with the co-founders. We always pursued the same goal. So I don't have any first-hand experience to explain, what I would do in a more serious situation. Yes, we did fight sometimes, but ultimately we were just fortunate to share the same set of values. We always treated each other with respect. We always took the time to sit down, if something wasn't right, pop open a bottle of tequila and just talk through it if needed, not engaging in any intrigue, not making any alliances, even during the early formative years of the company. So, and I'm really conscious about ourselves being super lucky that we didn't have to deal with anything else.
Hi, a question. Can you tell about your methodology, how you find a new worker, and what is the triggers when you see that it's time this worker go away?
Okay, so the methodology for hiring people and parting ways with them. We hire based on values, and you've heard that before. So many people say that, so many organizations declare that values are crucial. We actually live by our values. We found that specifically in our environment, which is super decentralized because we work on creative stuff, it's really important to make sure everyone is on the same length, that people can trust each other automatically. And we went as far as writing a handbook for the company 2 or 3 years ago, which includes a specific set of key values like honesty, transparency, ownership, mastery, a bunch of others as well. Explains specifically what we mean by ownership, for example. That ownership is owning any result, any outcome, any event that happens within your jurisdiction, whether it was in your job description, whether it was expected or not. If you are in charge of a small yard where you have to grow crops and a piece of rock falls out of the sky and destroys it, this is your rock because you own it. And you can seek help from someone, but ultimately this is your yard and this is your rock, and so on and so forth. We have a constitution with a set of statements that describe how we operate, because we really want to make sure that people coming in are really on the same wavelength as us, really live by the same values, because if they're lacking in competence, they can always catch up. They are all smart. Everyone that comes in is automatically super smart. Even guys coming fresh from the university, 21, 22 years old, 2 years in, they become amazing. But if they have the right kind of mindset. So on a more practical level, we used to work with agencies. We no longer do. We found that having an in-house recruiter is more efficient for us. Ultimately, it comes down to how many people you hire per year, because agencies typically charge 1 or 2 salaries per a successful hire. So if you're hiring 5, 10 people a year on average, then of course it's far cheaper to have someone in-house. But the biggest benefit for us is making sure that the person doing the screening and the interviews really understands our culture, like to the detail, so they can smell the right kind of person, because they know the team so well. They know, okay, this guy has the right kind of, manner of speech, the right set of values, the right kind of pedigree. They're gonna click amazingly well. And then they also do their onboarding. So they bring the people in, they take them through the interview process, which typically starts with the HR guys, then the whoever is going to be the supervisor or superior, direct manager, and then culminates with the CEO interview, which is like, we call it the final boss, but this is not a boss fight. This is just an introduction, even though formally I have a veto right, so I can kind of veto anyone, but that's never happened in practice. And then they do the onboarding as well. So they know the people coming in, and then they take them through the first month at work, making sure they are, all set up, plugged into all the right processes, and engaged to the maximum. These days, we also have a specific sourcer position, people basically doing preliminary screening, approaching candidates on LinkedIn, on job sites, on social media, wherever. And then they bring them to the recruiter, and then the recruiter does the more sophisticated stuff. Hope that makes sense. We really really care about hiring, because for years we really didn't, and that bit us in the ass so many times. And the worst things that happened with my company, without a doubt, bad hires, people who maybe great personally, just didn't fit, didn't click really well, didn't feel appreciated, came to work for a line on their resume, came to work for the salary, for the brand of the company. We had like every hiring mistake possible, we made it, and then we admitted this and kind of re-engineered the company to be HR first and everything else second. Like hiring or HR is clearly more important than products for us, which is a difficult thing to admit for a B2C company, but internally, this is so much the case. When it comes to parting ways with people, I think the most important discovery I made was that it's not the bad people who really undo your work, it's the mediocre people, or maybe fundamentally great employees who are not utilized to their potential, who are not empowered to do great things. So the end result is mediocre anyway, because the bad hires, the bad performers, you see them right away. They are right in the open. You can have a conversation with them and then solve this problem and then move on to get someone else to do the job. With mediocrity, you don't see it. They don't screw up in dramatic fashion. They kind of get things done, but they occupy the place on the team that could be occupied by someone amazing. So that's the hidden damage that's being done. And I'm being very cynical talking about this, but it is what it is. There's no reason sugarcoating it. If you have someone on your team, maybe they're a great person, maybe they're adorable, they're amazing, at the parties and in the kitchen, and have great professional skills. But the end result of their work is mediocre for whatever reason. And it's always the organization's fault in the first place, because they hired the person, they put them in those circumstances. It's always my fault, not their fault. But if this is the case, you are not having someone amazing do the work. Another interesting discovery, which we made, and which is also formulated in this in a publicly available memo that basically regulates how we hire and motivate and retain and choose not to retain people, is that sometimes it's in the employee's best interest that we part ways. If someone is not being, again, empowered to be their best self in any given position, they're just clocking on more experience and more years at the company, and their salary keeps raising, but they're not being challenged enough. They're not being, pressured to develop professionally. Maybe they have this amazing status in the company and people don't question them anymore. Maybe they're just in a unique position where they're the one, the expert in their field, and no one can really challenge them. So they've been with us 3 years, 5 years, 6 years. They have the super high salary because they've been getting upgrades and promotions. They end up in a golden cage, essentially, because they cannot go anywhere else because their salary is above the market. So they cannot go to another company anymore without a significant decrease in salary. They're not feeling satisfied or appreciated in our company. So ultimately, we're kind of locking them into this meaningless existence where, yes, they're getting paid well, but they're just declining professionally. And it's on us. The fault is with us because we put them in this golden cage. So it's our responsibility to unlock it and say, hey, we love you, you're great, but we think it's in your best interest and our best interest to separate ways from now on. And it's painful, but over years, I think we've parted ways with like 150 people, maybe 200 people. I think the vast majority of them had great careers after that, and this worked for their benefit. It was incredibly difficult for me in the beginning to fire people. And over the years, I've seen that typically employees win, because if you are considering firing them in the first place, then something is off, most likely. They're probably unhappy anyway. They're probably feeling the attitude. They're probably feeling, that they're not being appreciated. So you just have to have the balls to pull the plug and then observe how 2 years later, 3 years later, they have an amazing career that they wouldn't have had in your company.
But in your experience, you haven't met a case where those people in golden cages find their how to say job or how to say experience, no, challenge in the same job and reborn themselves there. Only solution is to let them go, you think?
We've had these cases, and it's always tempting to find another job for a person who's great, fundamentally, because you already know them and they're like family to you. And we used to have a habit of kind of putting people on the sidelines and trying to put them on another project. And I think there is no correct answer here. Sometimes it works. I think by default, we should consider parting ways, and then sometimes make exceptions when we are like severe in ties by default, and we're like mentally open in a different position somewhere else, and we honestly admit that this guy is the best candidate compared to the alternatives on the market, then in some cases we can do that. But it can become a dangerous habit. For us, it had been a dangerous and actually hurtful habit for years. When we had a group of people kind of shuffling around, like, okay, it's not working out for them here, let's put them here, let's start another project, let's give them this project, let them do something else. And then ultimately, huge expense for the company, huge waste of professional lives, because they could have been better employed elsewhere, probably. So we're really, really careful about this. But in some cases could work like magic. We had those instances as well where someone was not performing, we put them in another department, another team, a project with another dynamic, and bam, they flourish. But these are exceptions.
I have one
It seems
question.
to
If
me
you don't
that
mind.
Mikhail and Madis is raising hand for a long time.
For like 30 minutes.
Sorry.
Alim, let's take them. I don't know, Madis or Mikhail, who was the first one? I didn't.
Thank you, Yana. Vladimir, just wanted to say you thanks for your speech and for some insights, and just to say hello for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Is there another question? Okay, no. Thank you also for the speech. Can you tell me what is the best way to tell the employee that we should go our separate ways?
I'm thinking back to the instances where it happened and how it worked out. What we try to always do is emphasize that this is not about them. It's about the organization, because ultimately, as I already said, the company is responsible for hiring people, putting them on the right kind of tasks. And if something is not working out, this is never an employee's problem in the first place. This is the company's problem, because either they failed to find the right guy or failed to apply their skills properly, onboard them properly. So it's never about them. And I would typically say that, frankly, we have a formal process where we don't ever fire people right away. We have this conversations every 6 months that are not exactly performance review, but they are framed as like personal development sessions where we look at the professional skills based on the employees' self-perception and feedback from, let's say, their immediate manager. And we try to find a mutual understanding of which way they want to develop, like stay in their position, grow towards a role with more professional expertise or a management role, and then kind of lay out a roadmap. And of course, if they are receiving negative feedback, we use the same sessions to say, hey, there's been this kind of feedback about you. It's not personal. Maybe they are conspiring against you. This is not about your performance as a person. It's just that some people in the organization are not happy and something is not working out. So let's come up with a plan to fix this. And we would typically give them some time to implement it. And then obviously next time, if it's not working out, it's the same thing again. We'll basically point to us and say, hey, we've tried, something isn't clicking. We believe that it's in everyone's best interest to go separate ways, no hard feelings. It's entirely possible. You guys did a great job. It's just that something, there was something we couldn't fix. So we try to be always really friendly, really show empathy and kind of emphasize that this is not you doing a bad job, not being apt to the task, but there's some combination of factors that got us into this situation, and it is what it is. Again, we believe that this is the best way to solve this. And of course, these conversations can be painful at times, but again, everyone in the management position sooner or later learns that if you kind of cave into to your emotions and you are sentimental, then ultimately you pay the price. When people are still around after 3 years, they are unhappy, their careers are not progressing because you didn't have the balls to make the call right there and then. And then you look back and you think, shit, this is a skeleton in my closet. I wasted 3 years of human professional life and delayed the development of the team around in the company. So everyone around me paid the price. And I had a moment of acute understanding of this when I fired a producer on our most important project revenue-wise after feeling that I should have done this for like 2 years. But that was a long time ago. I wasn't, as smart or confident, arrogant as I am now. So I was having those doubts. I was thinking, hey, this guy is more senior than I am, has more experience in the industry than I am. Let's give them another chance. And they were just consistently mediocre with the results. And then finally, I made the call. We spent 8 months looking for another guy. A disaster, 8 guys without proper leadership. But then he came in, and since then, we grew the revenue of that project 7-fold within 3 or 4 years. So we went from making like 120,000 euro per month to making like 780,000 euro per month. So it's, in absolute numbers, that's a lot of money. And then I was looking back and thinking, holy smokes, if only I had done this sooner, I would have saved 2 years. At least 2 years of professional lives for a team of 25 people. So 50 years of, effort not being utilized efficiently. This is on me. Like, this is the price of my mistake or my indecision. So I think eventually we'll all learn to, think about it this way. There was a question in the chat, which I noticed. I don't want this to kind of disappear. Have you ever had a moment when you feel like you just want to drop everything because you cannot deal with it and you're like in confidence? If yes, how do you get past that? Oh, yes. And finally enough, one of those moments came when we're doing super well financially, when we had a big breakthrough. I think we went from making like 5,000 euro per month to making 400,000 euro per month within like 6 months. So that was huge growth. And I was supposed to be happy because, I got rich. It's good news for every founder. We finally have the money. We're not going out of business. I can go to my parents' place and say, hey, I didn't spend the last 2 years just playing video games. Here's something to show for it. And this is why I actually dropped out of the university, right? So maybe I should not finish. We should stop talking about this. So I was supposed to be happy. I was super depressed because I was doubling as a customer service agent at the time. So I was reading all the emails coming in. And, when you have like 500,000 people playing your game daily, there's a lot of feedback, and people emailing the developer, they typically are not the happy guys, telling you, hey, this is an amazing game. They have problems. They lost their progress. They are unhappy with the prices of stuff in the game. So I was getting like tons and tons, like thousands of negative emails, and that completely screwed my perception. And I was like, shit, this product is broken. This game is falling apart. We're gonna go out of business. We're disappointing all these people. They invested their time, and now there's a bug which broke the game for them. And the negative was just piling up, and that was like the darkest summer in my life. I was so depressed, and it didn't mean anything for me that we had money coming in. It was kind of piling up on the balance sheet. We're doing super well financially. Somehow, because I was getting my information from a specific source and I was coming in for work every day, starting my day by reading those emails, that was so bad. And eventually, of course, I dealt with it by hiring a customer service agent with a thick skin and kind of insulating myself against all this negativity and taking more, looking at the more balanced metrics, like what's the average review score, what's the retention rate, and life became a bit easier. But then later on, one really bad moment was when we bought an office building. Don't ask me why. There were reasons we did that. It cost us a lot of money. And then within a month from the transaction, there was a fundamental change in the market. Google basically unilaterally changed the rules of the platform. Long story short, we lost half of our revenue. So we went from being massively profitable to leaking like 200,000-300,000 euro a month. And because we just bought a building, we didn't have that much money in the bank. So we were suddenly, within a space of 2 months, we went from having lots of runway, really comfortable, profitable company to almost dying the same year. And there was absolutely no way to get rid of the building quickly. And we just had to, balance the book somehow. And we had to lay off people and close projects. And I was, again, super depressed at that time because I woke up at night thinking that I failed these people. What are we even doing with our company, with our lives? What else is out there? If you wake up in the morning, half of your revenue is gone. How can we even contemplate any further development? But then we responded by just working really hard and focusing on the P&L and cutting some expenses, becoming more cost conscious, applying some quick fixes to improve the monetization of the games we had on the market at the time, and eventually got out of this. And I think there was at least one other instance where I felt the same way. But then again, I felt like shit in these moments, and I lost lots of sleep and I put on weight, and I wasn't a happy, satisfied individual by any measure. But the only way to kind of fundamentally fix this was to distance myself a little bit from this and just convince myself that the company is alive. I'm doing a decent job. Being here in this position automatically means that I'm qualified for the job. Otherwise, we'd have someone else do this. We'd hire someone, we'd promote someone. Shit happens. Bad things happen. It's important to me. It makes me sad, but this is not destroying my life. And this kind of distanced attitude, I think it's a far-fetched analogy, but maybe with doctors and patients, you have to adopt a similar approach, because you have to empathize, but you cannot empathize too much, because otherwise you just descend into madness. So there is balance to be found, and I think I managed to find it, but it took me like 9 years.
So I see that Thomas and Vadim and Christopher is holding the hand. Who was the first one?
Vadim or Christopher?
Vadim?
Yeah, perhaps. Thank you. Just one quick question. So, which approach framework, can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you use to manage team activities, your activities, project activities? I mean, how do you manage it?
It's different.
Yes, exactly.
On different scales, it's vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to production teams, we typically use task tracking software like Jira and Confluence currently.
Mm-hmm.
So we are on the Atlassian suite. I cannot say anything in favor of it or against it, because I'm not making this calls, frankly. I'm not an expert. We've been using it for a few years now, and apparently it works. For myself, I like to keep it lightweight. I adopt Inbox Zero as my main method of keeping track of things. So I try to never have an email or a message unanswered or not snoozed when I check out, whenever that is, if ever. And I keep a running to-do list. I also have, I use Google Keep, like really basic stuff for like a to-do list of things that, you know, are not in my inbox. And I really like having things in my inbox because, again, I control it so well. If it's empty, then I'm done for today. There's nothing else urgent. But also some things just don't fit there. So I keep a running list in Google Keep where I just check off items as I go. And right next to it, I have a pinned list of annual and quarterly goals, both work-related and personal, to kind of keep my attention focused on them, because it's so easy to get caught up in the loop. And then like, oh, I wanted to learn Spanish this year. It's 27th of December, I can still do it. Same applies to business goals. So I've tried different approaches, different methodologies. I used to have a diary where I would write down all the things I've done. I used to have this method where I would break down my day into like 15-minute chunks, trying to be more efficient. Yes. Actually, some kind of variation of it, which is like more advanced, whatever. And maybe it works for some people. And I can totally imagine it working in some environments. But then I would achieve a lot, but I wouldn't be impactful still. I'd get lots of tasks done, but sometimes I just need to take a day off and just sit there and think like, hey, should we invest in virtual reality right now? Read up on stuff, talk to people, you know, play some VR games, make a judgment, buy some hardware, test something, download the project, do that kind of stuff that's kind of explorative by nature. And it doesn't go down well with the, like, call someone, write this email, this sort of kind of workflow. But again, this is just me. I realize that I need time to think. Maybe there's a way to combine both. Sometimes when I feel like a lot of stuff has piled up, I have plenty of meetings coming up, I need to have like a really intense day, then I would just use Google Calendar and write down everything. Like, here's my lunch, here's my workout, here's my, stand-up meeting, my morning coffee, everything. So it's so controlled. I can make sure that nobody sleeps another meeting in between, something else. So I don't end up with like 12 hours of uninterrupted conversation without any toilet breaks. Sometimes I do that and I'm kind of preparing myself for this. Okay, well, today I'm going to be super efficient. I'm going to do so many things at once. I'm going to have so many cups of coffee. And then melatonin in the evening, and I drop that. But then the next day, I might just, check out and spend the whole day playing video games because I really need it. I need time to recover, and I'm not ashamed of this.
I really like that idea of scheduling your day to include things that you need as well, rather than just saying that if there's no meeting there, then that's basically just time that someone else can consume, right?
Yeah, they do that.
But it's not, right? So that's it.
Yeah, it's a necessity. It's a survival tactic because people would do that. And they're like, okay, I'm going to have my workout at 4 p.m. and it's not in my calendar. And then I look the other way. Somebody else is like plugging 2 meetings there because, it's an open time. Like, what the hell do you?
Calendly just makes it more difficult, right?
Yeah.
They do it without your permission. So yeah, you need to book your own time. I love that insight.
Yeah, I relentlessly block time when I'm not sure. Like, I did this conference yesterday. I knew I needed time to prepare, even though I had my like simple basic slides ready. It didn't take a long time to prepare. I knew I needed half an hour before to kind of get on the moon, go through the slides, kind of, meditate if needed. I cannot just jump from another call into like an international conference and be like, oh, hey guys, sorry, I'm like 5 minutes late. I had this conversation with my team lead. So yeah, and then again, if I have a workout routine, it matters to me. If I skip my workouts for the entire week, I feel like shit. I don't like this. I'm not happy with myself. This is reflected in my work. So this has to be booked. I don't want to sacrifice this because then if I do, then there's this emotional cost associated with it, which ultimately rains down on people.
Not to mention time with others that are in your life, right?
Exactly. Reading time as well. I have this automatic thing in Google Calendar, which basically automatically books an hour a day for reading or writing. which I do not follow religiously, but at least it's there. So it kind of automatically finds slots towards the evening. And I can always, say, hey, I'm not doing this today. I'm having a nice dinner with my wife or someone else, but at least it's there. So no one can touch this other than me. I can be lazy. Christopher, I think you've been waiting for a long time.
Thank you. No worries. It's actually very interesting insight, and of course, thank you very much for everything you have given us. It's very valuable. And talking about value, that's my question. You mentioned that you made a handbook about values that you follow in the company. I would like to hear some more on how you came up with all the bullet points, or how you have organized it, and how did you make a brainstorming, or how did the list of values come up?
We were inspired by some other companies. There are famous examples out there within the domain of gaming. Valve handbook has been in circulation for at least a decade, I think. It was leaked at some point. I think it was leaked intentionally to promote the culture of the company. There's a lot of questionable stuff in there, like desks on wheels that people can move around the office, and having laundry in the office. It's very specific, but it did shed some light onto what it means to have a strong culture in the company, what it means to have a set of values and adhere to those values, and how they kind of go from concept level, like, hey, we want to trust each other, to the practical implementation. Like, what does it actually mean to trust each other? It means that if a person is joining your team and they're just fresh from the job interview that they've completed, you do not test them. You do not, give them shit jobs, look down on them for the first 3 months until they prove that they're capable. They are capable by default because they've passed through the process. Whoever is responsible for their field interviewed them, the CEO interviewed them, the HR has interviewed them. They are good enough, unless they prove otherwise by screwing up massively. So that's handbook is very famous. It's arguably outdated. Another one is very concise. It's a series of slides published by Netflix that can be easily found on SlideShare or elsewhere. It has a different focus. It's really short, but does a good job at kind of emphasizing and communicating the specific values they live by. And then there's another company which we are friendly with, also kind of like partially in gaming, but really similar culturally. The founders are similar in terms of the way they see the world. So we borrowed their handbook as well. This is something I cannot share with you, but we did borrow some ideas. And in the end, we basically slept on it, and we came up with the structure where at the very top we have the mission and the vision for the company. And that sounds really corporate, but we found that we actually need that as well. It needs to be written down. Goals, like the big ambitious goal, as they call it, to be this and this and that. The 3-year goal, more realistic, more measurable. The key values, there's 3 that are core, and there's like 9 that are secondary, but they are all valid. It's just that we need to focus on the 3 that really define who we are, because nobody can remember 12 or 14 values. It's not realistic. Then we have a manifest, which is basically, I think 1 page or 2 pages of free-form text explaining, how we hire people, how we talk to each other, how we operate. Basically, really concise, short sentences like, we do not hide any information from our team members unless there is a legal reason or an ethical reason to do this. Because transparency helps everyone get equipped with useful data earlier so they can make better decisions, and we shouldn't create obstacles just because we're not sure if this should be shared or not. Those things, free form text. Then there's the Constitution. Again, there's a lot of redundancy here, but we really like to have different formats. So whoever is reading this, maybe they kind of scroll through the values because they sound boring, but then they come across the Constitution, and the Constitution, is full of stuff like, we respect everyone's right to be weird. And people like, oh, this is interesting. And this gets their attention, but it's basically a reflection of the same values, just formulated differently. And then it kind of dives into the more technical stuff, like getting set up with the communication tools, the structure of the company, more tactical issues. And then at the end, there's this memo, which I already mentioned, about hiring motivation and parting ways with employees, which was written initially as a memo for my managers, but then we decided to put it in the handbook as well, because, if my managers operate by a certain set of rules, why not disclose it to anyone, even if it's very pragmatic and it basically says stuff like golden cage and all those things. If someone is, if an employee is willing to put the time and, has the self-awareness to go to the last page and read through these rules, then, good for them. They probably deserve to, and they're ready to understand this perspective as well. It was hard though. It took us 2 years to finalize, which is kept writing and rewriting and discussing, but at the end of the day, we wanted buy-in from the entire management team. So we wanted 16 people to say, yes, we have read it, we have slept on it, we are 100% on board with every single word. We fought over values, which is funny because you would say, hey, it's common sense stuff like honesty. Who would say that honesty shouldn't be one of our values? But when it comes to choosing the exact 12 or 13 and then the exact 3 that are crucial, and then do we choose responsibility or ownership, honesty or transparency, or both? We basically kept discussing this for like months and months on end, but it was worth it. Could have been done much faster though.
So we talked about a little bit about laying people off and firing, well, I'm coming from the travel sector currently, from a travel agency. It's been a funny year, but we had to lay off some people also. And what do you think about finding new jobs for the workers, or finding new ways to give other works to the person that's actually not their actual job description, or making the shift? And if it's not possible, you see that the person is not capable of doing that, and you fire or like lay off. And would you like try to help them in the future, in their career endeavors, or what's your take on that?
We don't like shuffling people around internally when, let's say, their project is shut down and there is no strong demand. Of course, if there's strong demand and there's someone who's like, oh yeah, finally I can grab this guy from my team, then of course they're free to do this. But if that doesn't happen, there is no demand. We don't like trying to like find a place for people, because we begin to make assumptions. We begin to kind of cut corners and like, oh, she's a marketing girl, but she really enjoyed organizing that party. Maybe she can become our event coordinator. Whereas, what you really want to do is identify that you actually need an event coordinator, open a job, look at a bunch of candidates, pick the best one, not, try to kind of squeeze them into this position. So we don't like doing this. We've done this though, and we'll probably do this in the future, because sometimes you just can't resist, but undesirable. We help people find careers elsewhere. We have, just as we have this onboarding process, we also have, in case of projects being shut down and layoffs happening, the HR guys try to proactively help people with future employment. And of course, there is a limit to how much they can do for them, because sometimes you just can't find a job, and no HR guy can do this for you. But it's part of the protocol. And we've succeeded doing this as well. We had instances where significant percentages of people being laid off got employed based on our suggestions. But I don't want to overestimate this. I don't want to, come across like saying, yeah, of course, if you get employed as CM, you are set for life. Whatever happens, we're gonna find you a job. You're going to be taken care of forever. Things happen. We try to help, but our ultimate goal is always to, take care of those still on board. And we are being nice and we're being responsible, but only when we can afford this.
Question. Could you suggest a tool that your team allows be on the same page in a project?
A tool for being on the same page in the project. Frankly, different tools across different teams. Again, using Jira and Confluence helps, but this is kind of a heavyweight thing. You write endless pages of documentation, you assign tasks, and at scale it works well. On a smaller scale, probably too much effort for too little benefit. Having daily calls helps. Having lots of well-designed, properly named chats for all the interested groups really helps. Just communication overall is the best instrument. Maybe it's useful if I tell a bit more about what we do on a company scale to keep everyone on the same page throughout. We publish weekly updates where our HR guys basically collect some news updates from team leads and compile it to like a newspaper format, which is sent to the main Slack channel. So everyone interested can read up on, like a digest of things that happen in the company. Like, hey, this game had a new update. Those guys had this breakthrough, we hired this guy there. So they get a sense of, okay, something is happening in the different departments. This is where we are headed right now. Every month I do a video stream for the entire company where I talk about project performance. Like, this game made so much money. They did these updates. This worked out well. This failed. Basically go through all the titles we operate or are developing. Sometimes if there's a significant event in the industry, I can talk about this as well. Like, hey, Apple just rolled out iOS 14.5 with the app transparency tracking settings. And this is what it means for us. And then there's a Q&A session where people can submit questions anonymously, or they can ask them in the chat right away. So every month there's an hour and a half of this kind of town hall kind of type of meeting. I have bi-weekly calls with my managers where we no longer report on what we've done. Instead, we write a memo. It's like a spreadsheet where we plug in quick updates, like, we're working on this right now. This is what we're planning to work on as a team. These are the problems we are facing. And there's a field for questions. So everyone fills the spreadsheet ahead of the meeting. Then we spend like 5-6 minutes just reading. And then questions are being answered. So this is the most efficient format which I found for the management team to kind of catch up on everything, because otherwise we'd have people going on for like 10 to 15 minutes about their project. Everyone would be super bored because you can read faster. You don't need the whole like change log from the most recent update. And we couldn't just regulate time, like give everyone 5 minutes, because some projects are bigger than others. There's more going on. So now we just write it, read it in 5 minutes together in silence, then discuss. Some teams have stand-up meetings daily, some don't, based on their dynamics. Standard Agile, Scrum derived stand-up meetings, again, same format. What I'm working on right now, what I did yesterday, what I'm planning to work on, what's blocking my progress, something along these lines, really fast. Some guys I know get into Discord channels, especially now during the lockdown or semi-lockdown, when not everyone's in the office. People just plug into the Discord channel, which is live all the time, so they can imitate being in the same room if they wish so. But it's really team specific, frankly. There are some certain centralized things that we do, like my video streams. They're super well received all the time. I used to do like emails for the company. Then I switched to videos that I recorded, and then I started doing live streams, and it's working amazingly well. This is something everyone is always talking about. This is something my HR guys are always bringing up during interviews, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is awesome that like you are doing this like live interactive sessions every month where you talk about the money and failures and wins, and we can ask questions even anonymously." Super useful. Was that in the right ballpark? Good, thanks.
So seems like I don't see any questions anymore. So guys, but I suppose really it's a lot of information, and it's information which you need to digest for a little bit, and to really allow yourself to be and to be happy before everything what you do. So if there are no any questions, Vlad, do you have any questions to us? Maybe it'll be fair enough to let you make some questions if you would like.
I've been talking so much. I don't want to trigger anyone.
Okay, but then I suppose we can stop for today, and tomorrow we don't have the sessions, but tomorrow I hope we can figure out with Yanis how we gonna proceed with the mentoring, because we still don't have the normal scheme. Vlad, thank you very much. You are awesome as always. So I'm always enjoying listening to you and always thinking, and I'm really quoting a lot of your talks or like what you have explained from your experience. So guys, this is the life of co-founder when you're a little bit more than a couple of years inside of the business. So keep it in mind before you decide to continue. So
just as one closing thought, if I have a moment,
yeah, of course,
that I can come across as confident, dropping this actionable advices, life wisdom. Just want to be very upfront that this is just my way of doing things, not necessarily the best way, not necessarily the smartest way. I do not always practice what I preach. I make mistakes. I forget about things. So I don't want to come across as this like guy who knows how everything is done or should be done. There's many varied approaches. There's plenty of awesome books written on the subject, ranging from kind of like self-help for entrepreneurs to really, really interesting, almost academic stuff like Under the Paranoid Survive by Andy Grove, discussing the challenges of running a big company as a CEO. So there are many different perspectives on virtually every subject which I touched. So please take it with a grain of salt. This is just me trying to distill my personal experience into something digestible, not necessarily correct or valid in your specific case.
This is the same as you are reading some books. It's the books are not for like ultimate copy paste into your life, but the books are really for digesting and rethinking and transformation of yourself. So thank you very much, and see you on Monday.
Good luck.
I should end everything.